This should be played at high volume.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tobacco Road Sports Radio Network. My name is Randy Pettitt, a local announcer here in the Triad area, best known for my time at historic North Wilkesboro Speedway and the famous quarter mile over in Winston-Salem, my hometown. And I've appeared on the microphone at, now 115 tracks, including Carraway Speedway, which is in Sophia, North Carolina, Randolph County, just a stone's throw from Asheboro, North Carolina. And we have racing coming up right here in the Triad area. On March the 9th, Carraway Speedway opens its 2025 racing season. We've already had racing there this year, but it did not count toward the regular season. And with us tonight on the pit stop is the 2024 602 Modified Champion from Kernersville, North Carolina, Jaxson Casper. Jaxson, welcome to the pit stop, man. How's it going today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Randy? I'm excited to be here.
Man, I'm doing great, man. And for the race fans in the area that have not been to Carraway Speedway, this young man has been one of the guys to beat week in and week out in modified competition down at Carraway Speedway. And he comes from racing royalty here in the Carolinas and Virginia. He is a grandson of former car owner David Riggs and that Riggs racing family. And of course, that's pretty good stock if you want to hop behind the wheel of a modified, Jaxson. And tell us a little bit about how you got started in racing and what's your first memories of hanging out with the Riggs racing team that had so many famous drivers. Of course, the self-proclaimed king of the Southern Modifieds, Junior Miller, L.W. Miller, who a lot of race fans now know as Mr. Kelly Earnhardt, and so many more legends of modified racing that drove for your family. What do you remember about as a kid growing up around modified racing here in the Triad?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, see, I grew up around modified racing from both my dad. He actually drove a modified, and I grew up going up to Virginia and seeing a modified in my grandpa's shop at my grandma's house, underneath the house there. So I always grew up around the modified, and see my dad, him driving a modified down at the stadium, that kind of gave me the urge and the itch to, want to get in one of those open wheel beasts. And so I started off racing go-karts when I was about 6 years old. And actually, funny enough, my mom, she wasn't too found with the whole racing thing. She had been in racing her whole life, and she was kind of over it, and she didn't want me to get hurt. So me and my dad, we snuck off to the go-kart tracks every Friday night, and we told her we were going catfishing. So we did that for about a season, and we got away with it. Yeah, we got away with it, and before I knew it, I won my first championship. We invited her to the banquet. She wasn't too happy about it, but I actually, I've been good friends with Philip Smith my entire life. I've always looked at him as a grandfather figure as well. So I actually hid my go-kart in between Jason Myers and Burt Myers. It was actually at their shop at the time. So it was pretty cool having my go-kart next to Burt Myers' race car and then seeing him race Saturday night at Wilmington. And it was just, that I think that's really what made me want to get in the modified the most, was seeing Burt Myers win all these races and just having my go-kart next to his race car. I mean, that fueled it right there.
Well, Philip Smith, no slouch either, a two-time champion of the Madhouse, and he's won a bunch of races over there. Man, you've got quite a fountain of knowledge there in Mr. Smith behind you, and of course several great racers from Kernersville. Melvin Puddin-Swisher won a lot of races over at Bowman Gray as well, and you're just kind of continuing that Kernersville legacy. A lot of great drivers from that area. Bobby McCarty from the Cars Tour. I'm sure you run into him at the local convenience store, the Walmart down there. A lot of great drivers there in Kernersville. Jaxson, you are, I believe, 23. Is that right?
Yes, sir. 23.
You're one of many, many talented young drivers in the modifieds these days, and I've had the pleasure of calling a bunch of races for guys like you, Justice Calabro, Carson Lofton. Had Carson on the program last week, and so many other great young drivers hopping behind the wheel of the modifieds. You've had a really two solid seasons down at Carraway Speedway. Now, down there, we race the 602 modifieds. Those are a little different than the ones over at Bowman Gray. Can you kind of briefly explain the difference between what we race at Carraway and what they race on the Smart Tour and over at the Madhouse?
Okay, so it's just to keep it simple, it's a whole lot smaller of an engine. It's a 350 crate engine, and you're supposed to get them from GM and leave them stock as is. And that's basically the major difference between the Bowman Gray cars and the Carraway cars. There's obviously, we use a different carburetor. The tire size is the same for Bowman Gray. Smart Tour, they use a way wider tires, so they get a whole lot more grip. And hopefully we'll get one of those things one day. That seems like a whole lot of fun.
I like the way you said you're supposed to leave it stock. I'll leave that alone.
There's a lot of guys that get in there and mess around. It's racing.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges of, if you will, crate racing of any kind, whether it's crate dirt late models or crate late models on pavement or 602 modifieds and all those type of classes. But we won't go down that rabbit hole, man. I know there's a lot of teams that do it right. Right, and there's some that kind of work around in a little gray areas, shall we say? But that's racing. That's been going on since race number one back in the 40s. Jaxson, you've had two great seasons down at Carraway. Of course, the 2022 Carraway Speedway 602 champion was Carson Lofton. We had Carson on the program here last time, and Carson has moved right up the ladder. Then we had you and Justice Calabro battling for the championship there in 2023. Man, you lost that championship by a whisker. And tell us a little bit about that last couple of races of that season and how that championship got away. And then we'll talk about the one that you reeled in.
Yeah, so that season, it was a rough one for us for sure, Randy. We had won, I believe it was seven races that season. I thought I had the championship in the bag, going throughout the season. We just winning that many races, you'd think you were doing pretty good, but we blew up 5 motors throughout the season. It cost us 5 races. Yeah, we blew up 5 motors that season, which really hurt our budget. And we got back on our feet. We continued to fight, and we didn't give up. And it came down to the last race. It came down to the last race, and I actually was going to drive my car. My car was fixed. I had engine problems. I think it was 2 races prior before championship night at Carraway Speedway. And I get to Carraway for championship night, early practice. I'm buffing out the car, making sure everything's going to be all right for the night. And long story short, we had engine problems all over again in early practice. So I called my good buddy Josh Louder at the time, and he had a spare car. He brung it down, unloaded it for me, and we qualified on the pole with it. I was really excited. I thought we were going to have a good night. It turned around. Everything was good again. And then right before the race, I went to go start the car, and the battery was dead, and we couldn't push it off. There was no way getting the car started, and that's how I ultimately lost the championship. I got to sit in the pits and watch the other guy just take it from me that way, and it's really devastating. But it kind of fueled the fire.
That had to be devastating. Jaxson, that's something I think every race fan can identify with. I think we've all at one point or another had an instance where we went out to our vehicle and turned that thing over and it didn't do anything and we were stuck. Yeah, so we know that's a pretty helpless feeling. And man, that was one of the most interesting ways I've ever seen anybody lose a championship. And the good Lord works in mysterious ways, as they say. Yeah. And that worked in Justice Calabro's favor because that team certainly was there all season. They dug hard, and Justice just couldn't believe it. And, he was he was probably just as devastated for you as you were. I mean, he enjoyed the
Yeah.
championship, but talking with him many times afterwards, he didn't want to win it that way. But, sometimes
No,
that's just the
nobody
way
does.
racing is. That's sometimes the way racing goes. Now, let's fast forward here to the 2024 season, and you were able to put it all together. And how relieved were you when you finally hoisted that championship trophy down at Carraway Speedway for the 602 Modifieds?
Yeah, Randy, I was relieved. I'll tell you what, that's all I wanted all 2024 was that championship. I wanted that big gold trophy. I watched Justice Calibro get it at the banquet, and it made me even more eager to have one of my own. So that's really all I wanted, and I set that goal early. I told the guys this is what I want to do. I want to win that championship, and I'm so thankful for them, JW, Reggie, my dad, and everyone else that made it possible. They took me serious, and we got down and we won a bunch of races. We won not just at Carraway, we won a race at Orange County Speedway, which was amazing. Love that place too. But ultimately, we had a great season at Carraway, and that's what we wanted to do, and we did it.
Yeah, that's got to be something pretty special. And as I always say, once you win a championship, you'll always be a champion. No matter what happens to you in life and your racing career, you can always say, you know what, I did it. I put it all together. Winning a championship these days is probably not as meaningful as it was, say, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, when there were more cars and more teams and really more drivers chasing a championship.
Yeah.
Jaxson, now it seems like a lot of drivers kind of race part-time. A lot of them just don't go after those titles, but nonetheless, that trophy is in your home, man, and your name will always be in the history books as Carraway Speedway's 602 Modified Champion. So congratulations. Folks, my name's Randy Pettitt. I'm your host of the Pit Stop here on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio Network. And whether you're listening to us live on local radio in Winston-Salem or Greensboro, or if you're finding us on Tobacco Road Sports Radio Network or some other streaming platform, we appreciate you listening tonight. I am talking with Jaxson Casper. He is a 23-year-old, I guess it's fair to say, second-generation driver, and he is a grandson of the legendary car owner in modified racing, David Riggs. His dad, Jamie Casper, a driver, and
Jay Casper.
Jay Casper. There's a bunch of you guys. Jay Casper Jay drove and has wrenched modifieds for many years. So another of the great racing families here in the Triad. Well, Jaxson, you mentioned Philip Smith and Burt Myers down there in Kernersville, where you're located. The Madhouse had a starring role, recently when they brought the Clash to Bowman Gray Stadium. And I understand you were able to go attend that race. How was it?
I was. It was a blast. Me and my father, we went and we sat in turn one up high so we could see the track, and we had perfect seats. It was awesome. There was a ton of people. The atmosphere was amazing. I was really impressed with the racing. I wasn't expecting them to go 3 wide, but they definitely showed that it was a different caliber of driver and a different caliber of car too. So they put on a good show, and I was very surprised with the racing.
Yeah, I'm one of the most critical of NASCAR a lot of times, but I have to applaud them and all the folks who made the decision to bring big league stock car racing back to the Triad, back to the Madhouse, or really where it was there for several decades. It was one of the signature tracks on the tour back in the 60s and 70s, and of course the sport kind of outgrew it. But it's great to see NASCAR going back to its roots. And, I love grassroots racing, and that's what we're all about down at Carraway Speedway. We'll open our season on a Sunday afternoon show, March the 9th. And that leads me to ask you, what are your plans here for 2025, not only for Carraway, but after watching the modifieds over at the Madhouse for so many years, is it in your plans to maybe run some smart modified tour races? And of course, Carraway has a big $5,000 to win modified race for the more horsepowered NASCAR tour type cars on March the 15th. So with that said, what are your plans for 2025?
Well, so I'll tell you, my original plans for 2025 was to run the CCMS Tour, the Carolina Crate Modified Tour, which had a couple races at Carraway, and the rest were at Hickory mainly. So I thought I could do pretty good and chase the championship there. But actually, me and my dad, we just had the opportunity, and it's not completely For sure, yeah. So I'm not gonna say too much, but I think we might have our hands on a tour type motor. So I
All
might
right.
talk them in. I might talk them into taking the 602 out of the car now, and we might go chase that $5,000 at Carraway. But I definitely am planning on running at the stadium. I don't know if we're gonna build another car for the stadium and leave that car as a 602 car. Right now, we're just chasing more sponsors to do that, really. But I think we do have a motor on the way. So we'll have one in our hands here soon. And then after that, it's either make the decision to take the motor out of our car or build another one.
Well, good deal, man. I'm
Yeah,
always rooting for you young guys to continue your racing career. I think I kind of mirror a lot of you guys here in the Triad and in my career. Uh, you know, I had an opportunity maybe to kind of move up in the world when I was younger, but life, job, family, just situations. A lot of times, find yourself. You're in grassroots racing. That's your home. And of course, I've been fortunate to announce at so many different tracks, including Bowman Gray and Carraway Speedway, two of the greatest tracks in the country. There's nothing wrong with being a weekend racer. A lot of folks
no,
have to understand that not everybody makes it to the big leagues. So why not enjoy the journey? And that's kind of always been my attitude. And it seems like you're in that same place.
yeah, absolutely, Randy. And I'm perfectly okay with being a weekend racer. We'll see where it takes me. And I love racing. There's nothing I'd rather do than be at the racetrack on the weekend. And like I said, there's no better place than the racetrack. And one more thing I want to say is I did grow up watching you, Randy, at the stadium, so I'm a big fan of you as well. And like I said, the first time you interviewed me at Caraway, that was a very surreal moment for me.
Well,
I've
man,
always watched you wear the fancy pants growing up as a kid, and seen you across the track at the stadium. So
I appreciate that, man. And
yeah,
a lot of the young people that I've met over the years, many of them now are starting to have their own families and bringing their kids up to me. So I've been doing
absolutely.
this a while, but I appreciate you saying that. I
Thank
enjoy
you
it
for
too.
all you do,
None of us
Randy.
do this for the money. Thank you, brother. None of us do this for the money. We do it because we enjoy it. And I've had a lot of people ask me, man, why do you keep doing that? Well, racing is my family. There's so many people that I've met in the pit areas, in the stands, even sponsors who we become friends, and that's the most fun part of the sport. I think our sport gets branded a lot of times unfairly for being a bunch of rednecks, for fighting, cussing, shooting the bird. The Madhouse certainly branded for that. But all in all, if you put that aside, racing people's really, really good people. And I remember your family being such good people when the original iteration of the Smart Tour come along. How do you think your grandfather David Riggs these days would view the current iteration of the Smart Modified Tour? You think he'd be pretty proud of where that tour is going?
I'm not so sure. Hopefully, I think he would. I think he loved the Smart Tour, and I think he wanted to grow just as much as the Smart Tour wanted to grow itself. And I think he'd still be there racing in the Smart Tour. Absolutely, I do, and hopefully, he'd have me as a driver.
There you go. Now, what do you remember about when you were a kid, getting to hang out with, let me pick on Junior Miller for a minute. Junior was the driver for your family's team and won a bunch of races and championships on the Smart Modified Tour. What do you remember about Junior Miller? And do you think your grandfather used to having that Tasmanian devil behind the wheel of the car, and your style's totally the opposite, man? So talk about that contrast a little bit.
Yeah, so I was really young when Junior was driving for my grandfather, but one thing I did remember about Junior Miller was when we went to the racetrack, there was a really, really, really high chance that we were going to win that race. It was almost a 70% chance that we were going to be in victory lane with Junior Miller. he
Now,
he
I've never seen you, in my view, deliberately use that front bumper and just knock somebody out. And Junior Record's grandmother to win a race. Let's just be honest. That's not your style, is it?
No, no, I try to say I'm more of a methodical driver. I like to let the race come to me. And I've won a bunch of races that way. I don't ever think you should go out and try to take it from someone if your car can't win it itself. I wouldn't ever do that.
What do we need to do to get local racing juiced up again? I think it's got to help get the fans excited, having the Clash
Yeah.
here in Winston-Salem, having the national attention. There's tracks like Carraway Speedway. You mentioned Orange County Speedway. I've announced some races there. I actually worked for that track back in 2007. And so many other great tracks like that, let's be honest, they're struggling a little bit to get fans in the bleachers. They're struggling a little bit to get enough teams. And man, Darren Hackett and the team down at Carraway, they've done a lot of work to that place. They've got a brand new concrete concourse. They got beautiful aluminum bleachers down there. You can park right next to the main gate. Nice bathrooms, reasonable concessions. There's no reason in the world for a race fan not to go to Carraway Speedway. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. The food's great. And they actually started doing things for the fans. It's not just racing. Last year I seen they had an axe throwing thing one day, and they have monster trucks throughout the season. All types of drift events throughout the seasons. It's not just racing. They really do try to put on a good show. I think for Halloween they even had a haunted trail or something last year. So they try to do a bunch, and I think a lot of people should really come check it out in 2025.
What's the most enjoyable part about the sport, other than actually driving the car, that keeps you coming back wanting to do this?
I would say the family. Like you said, Randy, it's all one big family. Like from the guys that helped me on my car, from my family being involved in it, and just meeting people at the racetrack and growing up with them. And I got friends all the way in New York, Florida, all over from racing, and they really are. I consider them all family. Even though they're
Well,
competitors, we're all family at the end of the day.
fate is funny, as we mentioned. I want to circle back to Justice Calabro again. Justice won about everything you could win in a Legends car. He was a shooting star, had a tremendous upward momentum. Comes to Carraway, wins the 602 Modified Championship. And I don't know if you remember, but when the Cars Tour came to Carraway, he had an opportunity to hop in one of those Pro Late models, got in the car and led the practice, man. Had never sat in the car before in his life. How in the world does a talented young driver like a Justice Calabro or yourself, how do you guys get overlooked by these teams, that looking for people to put in an ARCA car in the truck series? I think that's almost criminal that guys like you don't get a shot.
Well, it's really money, Randy. It's all
I know.
if I had big sponsors behind me, it'd be a whole lot easier for me to get out there. And same for Justice Calibro and a lot of guys with, raw talent. And that's just the sad thing behind it is it's the sport takes a lot of money. It does. It takes a lot of money to run these race cars, and eventually guys run out of money. So hopefully
Yeah.
that doesn't happen to me. I think we're gonna try to look for some new sponsors in 2025. We're definitely gonna need them if we're going to Bowman Gray and the Smart Tour. So
Let me give you a minute to just to mention some of your crew guys and some of those sponsors that helped you win that championship at Carraway in 2024.
yeah, absolutely. I want to thank Reggie, JW, my father, Sammy, my grandma. She cooked for us. She cooked for those guys every single time we went to the race shop throughout the season. I mean, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, a full meal, and we had leftovers to bring home to our girlfriends and wives every single time. My grandma, Margaret Riggs, she is one of a kind. I love her to death. Seriously, I cannot thank that lady enough for all she's done for me. We actually keep my race car at her house, so that's why she's doing all the cooking. And she loves the race car too because of my grandfather. I want to thank my dad. He really has pushed me to get where I am today. I never thought I'd be in a modified. Honestly, I thought maybe the go karts might have been the end because I took a break off that and I went to play football and I went back to the stadium and I got the itch all over again, and I was hooked from just watching it. I felt like I was a little kid again, and I think someone has a picture of me on the phone, and I was just begging my dad, we got to get back into racing. I don't care how we do it. So big thanks to him. He's always supported my dreams and goals, and I really can't thank him enough. And I want to thank my mom for doing the same, my girlfriend for supporting me, and my sponsors, Wind Technologies, Triad Mulch, Newman Lawn Care, CED Electric, Andy at Pro Fabrications. He helped me out a bunch. He did. He helped me out with the headers. I got nice shiny headers. If you see them on my car, they're from Pro Fabrications. Those guys are amazing. Andy has done a bunch for me
They
throughout
are.
2024.
They were with us on the old Hooters Pro Cup and the other iterations of the Pro Cup Tour. Great guys down there. I agree. Well, Jaxson, man, I've got this nickname I pick at you about. I call you Mr. Mustache. You might be 23, but you got the nicest, coolest Tom Selleck mustache of a 45-year-old man. How long have you had the stash, brother?
So I actually got the stash all came from running at the CCMS tour. They had this brand Seeger. It's a brand from out west. It's just a clothing brand, and they liked my mustache, so that's how it all started. They actually flew all the way from California to shoot a little commercial with me. They told me to keep the stash and grow it out, and I've been growing it out since. So it's been about 3 years.
So, in other words, Justice Calabro, not the only fashion model among our modified drivers. That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Well, again, I'm Randy Pettitt. We appreciate everyone that's found us on live local radio or on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio Network or one of our streaming platforms and partners. We've got Jaxson Casper with us today. He is the 2024 602 Modified Champion from Carraway Speedway. And Jaxson, I appreciate you coming on tonight. Again, we want to give Carraway Speedway another shout out for all the local fans who got excited about racing and the Clash coming to town, and they're like, man, I can't wait for Bowman Gray to open. You're right. You don't have to. You can come on down to Carraway Speedway on March the 9th. They're going to open their 2025 season. I believe 602 Modifieds are on the schedule for that one. And then we got a big open invitation modified race, kind of like the spring version of the North-South Shootout, $5,000 to win. For the high horsepower NASCAR tour type cars coming to Carraway. And if you didn't hear it earlier, Jaxson indicated he's trying to put something together to make that race and maybe get behind the wheel of the higher horsepower tour type modifieds more during the 2025 season. Jaxson, I want to ask you about Carson Lofton. You raced some with Carson. You've been around him. Were you surprised when Carson made that move from the modifieds to the Cars late model tour? And does that give you hope for maybe finding a path to moving up the food chain, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does. And some of the sponsors he's picked up too, it gives me hopes because they're local sponsors, and I'm a local guy just like Carson is. And he won a championship at Carraway, then he moved up to the Smart Tour. He did awesome. Winning 5 races in a row. I mean, that's hard to beat. So he did awesome. So proud of him, and hopefully we'll have some success in the Smart Tour if we get there and move up to a fendered car. I'd like to drive a fendered car. Absolutely, I've never done it. This is only my 3rd year in the car. Well, the 2025 season will be my 4th year, so we'll see what happens. And just looking for new opportunities. If anybody wants to give me one, I will sure work at it. That's for sure. So,
well, you're on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio Network, and did you know this radio network is the home for the East Forsyth Fighting Eagles? And Jaxson, you're a graduate of East Forsyth, like my son. What year did you come out?
2020.
Oh man, you're in the same class my daughter was out at West Forsyth. What a tough senior year you must have had for COVID and everything.
Yeah,
I bet you were kind of glad that year was over, right?
Yeah, it was a tough year for us all. I'm sure it was rough, Randy, the whole COVID thing, and it was a mess.
All right, well, folks, there you have it. Mr. Mustache, Jaxson Casper of Kernersville, proud East Forsyth Fighting Eagle, and the reigning 602 Modified Champion of Carraway Speedway. I'll be down there. Hope you'll come and see the action live and in person at Carraway on Sunday, March the 9th. Until then, I am Randy Pettitt for the Pit Stop on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, and we'll see you at the track, and may all your days be race days.